substantially lower than.
A little early. Roll call.
Newman? Here. Muskelly? Here. Azar?
Here.
Chair Foster?
Here.
Showalter?
Here.
Raisin?
Here.
And Councilmember Polika?
Here.
All right, next we have approval of the agenda. This evening, we have one item, new business, a site plan review.
Motion to approve agenda?
Through the chair, can I make a motion to excuse?
Oh, a motion to excuse, thank you. So we have commissioners, thank you, Commissioner Brazen. Is it just Commissioner Akers
Yes.
this evening? Because we're down one.
Correct.
Motion for Akers, that she may or may not just be tardy this evening. I believe she said she would be in attendance, so.
Yes. I don't know. Yeah, I've not heard from her, but she did say that she was attending.
Second.
Is that a motion by Brazen and a second by Showalter?
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Motion by Brazen, second by Showalter. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have approval of the minutes of October 2nd, 2024 for the joint City Council and Planning Commission meeting.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion by Newman, second by Brazen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have a call to audience. Moment for anyone to come up to the podium if they want to speak on anything. But I do not see anyone in the audience. So we can move on to new business. 5A, consideration of site plan review application for 22305 Woodward for a carryout restaurant. And we'll have our city planner, so Commissioner Akers, Beccatani is with us. Sorry, we started right on time and all right, so we're going to get started with Christine Ross, our planner, to give us a review of the site plan for 22305 Woodward. Welcome.
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Christine. I'm one of the planners here. So I'm just going to briefly introduce this project. So this is for site plan approval for a proposed carryout restaurant at 22305 Woodward. It is on the west side of Woodward, going south between Pearson Street and Leroy Street. So currently this building exists as a longtime vacant office building. I think LA Insurance was the most recent tenant, but they left a number of years ago. And looking through our past documents and records, it looks like this building has always existed as an office use. So converting a former office use to a carryout restaurant triggers a site plan approval process. Currently, anytime a new business wants to go in, as long as it's of equal or lesser intensity, that would just be going through zoning approval and building approval, but because this use is more intense, as defined as our zoning ordinance, as defined in our zoning ordinance, it has to go through site plan approval process. So the main considerations here are the off-street parking requirements. The ordinance does require 10 off-street parking requirements. This is a very, very small parcel. So currently only 2 off-street parking spaces and 1 ADA accessible van space are able to fit on site. But the applicant has entered into a draft shared parking agreement with First United Methodist Church, which is just north of the parcel across from, I believe, Leroy Street. For the remaining 8 spaces, and there would also be a shared dumpster agreement as well. So some considerations for the shared parking agreement are the location of 6 on-street parking spaces on Woodward, There's limited parking on Pearson, there's bicycle parking spaces, and their business model is focused on carryout. There's limited seating indoors, and then they will have a walk-up window. Also, due to the small size of the parcel, they will have to request a landscaping waiver because it's mostly concrete. There's no room for a tree or 4 trees on this site. So they are requesting to pay into the city's tree fund. So that's about all I have now, and I'll pass it over to the applicants to talk about their project.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Michael Gray. This is Chef John Vermiglio. We are the owners and operators of Four Man Ladder, a small independent hospitality group. We live in Ferndale, but we do most of our business so far in the city of Detroit. You may be familiar with Grey Ghost, Second Best, and Basan. Those are our 3 currently operating locations, all with a different style of service. Those are dine-in style of restaurants. This is more fast casual. We anticipate volume because of the location being excellent, and basically people pulling up, picking up at either inside at the counter or at, if weather is permitting, of course, the walk-up window on Pearson. This would primarily be food, no real beverage component. We are not seeking a liquor license, so this is strictly sandwiches, carry out, and that's the basic gist for the business itself. As far as neighborhood impact, I would say that just that brief interaction with vehicles on the street and hopefully some pedestrian traffic coming south from 9 Mile, we're able to take advantage of, but for the most part, low impact for the neighborhood, but hopefully higher impact for the community with another reputable food service offering.
Okay. All right.
Ed?
No, not necessarily, but just for curiosity's sake, we'll be focused around burgers. Grey Ghost is known for their cheeseburger, and we're looking to kind of capitalize on our market share that we have with Grey Ghost, keep that branding somewhat equivalent, and then use that to do a fast casual model. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
All right. Well, we will move to questions and discussion at the commission.
I can open it. You're asking for a screen wall adjacent to the residential to be waived, but how does that benefit that resident that's going to be behind you with all this extra traffic?
Well, yeah, that's a tough question for me to answer without.
Yeah,
the impact.
so the ordinance does require screening, but because the whole parking lot is just open to the alley, it would be impossible to screen it. So that's why a waiver is needed for that, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to access the parking.
Through the chair on that item, has anyone reached out to the owner? Maybe the owner would welcome a screening wall or maybe some plantings, heavier bushes along that property line for themselves.
That area is kind of weird because it is all concrete, and that alleyway does directly butt up to his fence there, or her, whoever the tenant is. We've not personally reached out to him only because, you know, we haven't been aware of whether or not this project can move forward. Once that does happen, if it does happen, then we will introduce ourselves to not only that person that lives in that house directly there, but then the subsequent neighbors down the street as well, just to make sure that they know we are allies and here not to rock their world.
Yeah, right now on their property line, it's just a fence, you know, along the alley. It's a cyclone fence. But they may welcome some type of improved greenery and something to buffer the activity, because the reality is that the traffic is going to greatly increase in that alleyway than it normally does. Right now, probably most of the activity is probably for the church on Sundays, maybe Saturday night. But other than that, I'm sure it's a very quiet alley. But if you're going to be open 7 days a week, there's going to be a lot more traffic in that alley. So I apologize for taking up some of your time, Tom.
Not at all.
No, I do actually have a question on that for the city. As they're not able to accommodate the landscape on the property and are putting into the tree fund, would the city be able to direct those monies to that resident if they were to use them to plant on their property? That's something we've done in the past or would be?
That's a good question. I know DPW does typically use the trees for, or use the money for the trees for like parks and right-of-ways that the city owns, but DPW does have a tree sale program that I know of, that, you know, every year they have, I don't know, a certain amount of trees that residents can purchase for a discounted price. So, yeah, it's possible, but we can work with them on that.
Through the chair on that, do we know, so it's a triangular property, but their driveway or partial driveway is close to their house. Do we know the little green area belongs to them, or?
I'm not sure that there is a green area anywhere in there.
There is.
Only on their corner of the lot, you mean?
Like between their driveway and the,
Between the driveway and the alley.
any other questions or discussion on the landscaping in Screenwell?
Well, tangentially related, what are your hours of operation going to be?
Well, we haven't necessarily established that. We plan on offering lunch and Friday and Saturday, we may decide to be open until 1 or 2 in the morning.
Okay.
More than likely, we'll be out of the building around 11 p.m.
Through the chair, how do you plan to direct people to park a block over per your agreement with the church? I can see already that people are just going to park on the street, and I know that there's no parking signs, but I live on a street that has no parking signs, and people park anyways. So if this is going to be a quick carry out, run out to the window, people are going to park in front of these houses where there's no parking signs and run up to the window hoping they don't get caught. So my question is, how do you plan to direct people to make sure that they park a block away in order to come in and get their carry out food?
I don't disagree with you on where they will park. I mean, and we do want to take advantage, and part of the allure of this property is those 6 spots that are on Woodward there with the new bike lane. I've been doing an independent parking study because I live right down the street, so I walk by nearly every day just to see. So there is space there on Pearson before it gets there. I know that I just read this morning that the church next to us is going to be changing hands, so we know that obviously could change the reality of what's on the street. So we'll put as much signage in the alleyway that is approved, obviously through the city and with the tenants as well, to point them down, but that alley does connect to the church's parking lot.
And I'm sorry, just to clarify, you do live on Pearson?
I do not live on Pearson, no, I live on Saratoga.
Okay.
Just an avid dog/child walker. A lot of hours on the streets of Ferndale, which is how I came across this property.
Anything else on parking?
Once again, tangentially, I understand if this isn't something that can be answered, but do we know what the plans for the church are going to be and what the future use is slated to be for that?
It's private property, and it is zoned currently commercial. So it could be multitude, but you also know that we're in the middle of rewriting our ordinances, and I think some of the zoning is changing. I don't know if that's going to allow, I do believe that will allow for mixed use. So,
MXD.
yeah.
I did attempt to make a relationship with them, and I met with Father Paul, but he wasn't sure that he could make any decisions because of what he thought the future held for that spot. So, because that was the obvious first choice. There's 40 spots in there and right down the street.
Yeah, Kyle, you may have more information about what's happening with the property?
I actually was not aware that the church was changing hands, so that's a little bit of a surprise to me.
Last service is Sunday. Sunday is the last service for the church, and it's closing up.
Interesting. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It's zoned to R2.
It is zoned
The
R2?
new
Is it
zoning
R2 or R3?
In the draft.
Okay.
ordinance,
Yeah.
Sorry.
Because I think it's
We're talking about St. James, well, formerly St. James, now it's,
Sexual health.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's R3 right now, which is multifamily, technically. And it's proposed in the draft right now to be R2, which is still multifamily. So wouldn't permit any kind of, primary commercial uses.
Cal, might as well stay up, actually. I have a question for you. If the gentleman were to get a liquor license, would that trigger an additional review in terms of like parking?
For site plan, I don't believe so. I mean, we would be involved in the process as they go through the liquor license process. We do weigh in, and we would verify what kind of impact it would have on the neighborhood, but I don't think it would come back to site plan review if they were to do that.
Through the chair, I had a question similarly to the parking question and your comments about signage in the alley. Presumably when someone like turns into the alley, they'll see a sign that says like, keep going this way, and then they go to that parking lot. I don't know the dimensions of this alley, but I would then presume that people that park in that church parking lot are gonna walk back down the alley to the shop rather than going out to the street and back, because that's like the way that they just came, and it's probably like marginally a shorter walk. I guess were there plans for pedestrian safety? I don't know what level of like marking or demarcation is possible to like separate traffic from folks walking back there, especially if we're open until 2 a.m. and there's somebody, somebody drops somebody off and then they're, people who've been drinking, obviously not the DD, to like go get a burger and they're walking through the alley. It's like the worst case scenario, I would think.
Yeah, I would say that we haven't necessarily made a whole lot of thought to that specific application, but I'm sure we could make some markings. And, if we had to paint a little pedestrian lane back there, if that were permitted by the city, we would be open to doing that.
Yes, to Kyle and Christine, has there been anything similar with, thinking about like that property on Woodward Heights where we had like the walkways through the parking lot and had a long discussion about that one?
Which property on Woodward Heights?
The Ice House property.
Oh,
we're
right.
talking about.
I think in the case of this one, the alley kind of meanders a little bit, and where the parking lot is, I do think it does make sense to just get back on Woodward and then walk down. So I think it's reasonable to suggest any kind of signage or messaging makes it clear, you can walk back down Woodward. I mean, right now there's no curb cuts on that section of Woodward. It's one of the few that doesn't have any. So I think that would be a very safe journey to go up and down the street. So that's what I would recommend, but we don't have any like formal recommendations at this time in terms of like directional signage for the alley right now.
Yeah, through the chair. The vacant property next door, has there been any conversation with anyone? I don't know if that's owned by Zion? Is that Zion?
First United Methodist.
Oh, First United, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Looking at the property maps right now, and it looks like Zion owns that.
Yeah. Yeah, because they have it fenced in all along the alley, so it's not like someone can just walk through the grass area. And I think they use it for holiday trees in the wintertime to sell evergreen trees.
Other questions?
Should this go forward, would you, I would assume that at the very least, the employees would have to park in the shared parking lot and not take up any street usage?
Absolutely, yeah, that's yes, they will have permits as per our conversations with First United Methodist, and yes, all employees will park in that lot.
And how many employees are you expecting?
I mean, hopefully more than I'm expecting, but probably no more than 4, I would say, at a given time, given the square footage in there.
4 of the shared parking spots would be kind of more or less dedicated to be permanently used, which is
typically already accounted for in the numbers that we require of the maximum that we request. The 10 or whatnot, that would calculate in employees.
Through the chair, are you planning to make any kind of modifications to the building outside at all?
No, we plan to keep the original structure as it lies. I mean, we'll likely put up some awnings and some signage, of course, but beyond that, no. There is an exterior walk-in cooler that you can see there on the plans that would happen, and part of that screenage is going to come into play there, so we will make sure that.
You're building that on the exterior of.
We'll sit on exterior of the building, yep, but the door to it will be from the inside.
Yes.
And near there, we assume, so it doesn't indicate where the grease trap would go? Is that just outside the back door there, or?
So there's a few options here, and we're still exploring it, and we're kind of at a point where we can't move forward with it because I don't want to pay someone to tell me what we're going to do if they, we can't move forward. But the ideal scenario is that we would work with a company to install a grease filtration system. So basically what this will do will eliminate any team members from having to touch oil whatsoever short of dropping the basket into it. So it would be basically like 2 water heater size silos outside, and then they direct connect into the fryer lines. And so it would self-filter, and then one of them's a storage tank for the oil, other one's a waste tank. And then the company that you work with, whoever it may be, they come up and they refill oil through that and then also clean it out. So, and there's enough room in a couple of different areas, so we could utilize the fact that the fence line there along where that green space is lined with arborvitaes from the church's side. It's currently lined with weeds from this side, but we would eliminate those. So there is an opportunity to put that up, and if we do take that route, we would enclose it in some fashion to make sure that it's not an eyesore for anyone that's in the neighborhood and also inaccessible for the people that would be parking back there.
Yeah.
In the event that we don't take that route, we could fit the grease dumpster within the confines of that parking lot on site, which is obviously the safest move because then we would be moving hot oil. So that opportunity exists as well.
And so, since you're unsure, and if you did have the silos, we'd want to make sure that they're screened from that neighbor. So we might just add something that says that staff will work with you to make sure that grease process is located appropriately and screened appropriately.
Yeah, I want it more maybe than you guys do, for sure. I hate looking at that stuff. So we're very respectful of our neighbors. We're very conscientious of the fact that we want a good relationship. I don't need any angry neighbors. We've established a good rapport in our current neighborhood in Brush Park in Detroit. So I imagine it'll be the same. And quite honestly, I have to live here with these people as well. So I want to make sure they don't hate me because they'll know where I live too.
All right.
Through the chair, I'm least concerned with the church view of the grease that I am of the resident at 220 Pearson. So I'm really hoping that the city and you can work with the resident to make sure that they're going to be negatively impacted by this. There's no way around it. But hopefully we can soften.
For sure.
It's possible.
Yeah, go ahead.
Kyle or Christine, I can't remember. Do we notify people when we have these type of projects? Do we notify people within 500 feet? Was this resident noticed?
No, so because this is just a site plan for a change in use, we are not required to notice, so we did not. That's only triggered with rezonings, variances, special land uses, that kind of stuff.
This is because this is an existing commercial property that residents move next to should be anticipating commercial use.
Yeah, if it's a change in use, I think that we need to change our policy.
But it's a commercial property and it's a commercial use, and it was commercial use before. It's not like we're going from residential to commercial.
It's a change in use. It's going from an office, which is very low impact, to now high-traffic restaurant. I just think that we need to revisit how we notice our people, because people come back to us with these. How come someone didn't tell me? And you can't always expect residents to say, oh, every week I'm going to look in the website to see what's on the planning commission.
But they're also
Well,
living
do
next
that.
to Woodward and should be expecting the properties to be used for their anticipated commercial use. So, I mean, I understand that it can be, difficult to get used to something new like that, but also a resident should be anticipating that kind of use.
Through the chair, I'd like to go back to the grease traps issue. The system you described is fantastic. That sounds wonderful, saves your grease, keeps it clean, you use less. But however, regarding 3-compartment sinks and just general dishwashing facilities, those would need to be connected to a grease interceptor to, I believe, just meet code. I don't want to speak to that here.
There's
but
been, sorry, I didn't
Just
mean
be
to cut you
using
off.
like a under-counter version of that, or would you be putting something in the ground, or?
No, ideally, we will only need that. But yes, we will filter through there. There's been a little bit of confusion in the emails and such because the grease trap and the grease receptacle are obviously different. So yes, the idea would be to put one underneath the 3-well sink. So we'll make sure that that runs through there, as does the dishwasher.
Through the chair, I will apologize. I was looking at the wrong parking lot on the image, one on like the south side of, I think, Albany or Leroy, which would be way easier to walk through the alley, but the proposed parking lot is not that way, so I'm less concerned about the pedestrian safety piece now. But a follow-up question with foot traffic actually in that alley, where is I'm having trouble seeing it on Google Maps, the dumpster for the church located that you'll be sharing use?
About 350 feet down that alley. And there's a little bit of a pizza wedge out of the fence that contains that dumpster.
Yeah, if you could. Green space.
Oh, interesting. Oh, okay, I see it. Okay, I see it now. There's the dumpster. It's a tiny brown square. Okay, so then, I guess the follow-on concern is then employees in the alley at night for walking down. I mean, it's not that far. I was worried that it was like in the parking lot.
Oh, no.
And they were gonna have to go like quite a ways, so that's a lot less difficult. It's probably similar to what you have to deal with down in Brush Park or
Yes.
downtown by Busan, so.
But yeah, and it's well lit. There's security lights throughout the
great.
church there and alley
Okay.
lights as well.
Yeah, I've had to take bags from restaurants quite a ways before, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we would
Thank you for
just be
pointing that out.
replicating that same brown square you see there with a second brown square of the same size. And we'll work with the same company that they do, which is Cityways.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Just to add on to that, given the style of service as well, we expect far less consumption on premises, so there would be considerably less waste.
Through the chair, signage, is that still BZA?
Staff handles all the signage unless there's a signage appeal, which that would be BZA.
Okay,
But yeah,
that's what I thought.
any application comes to us.
Well, because my concern is, in looking at the current situation with the trees in front of the building, it's very hard to see the front of the building. So I'm going to assume that you're going to be wanting to have a sign on the north side of the building, and I don't think that you can have one based on the current ordinance. You can have one on the south side because it's on the corner, and you can have one on the front of the building, but because they don't face a street on the north side, there's going to be very limited visibility to.
Yeah, Kyle's checking the signage requirements now, and those two trees, they are on, in the MDOT right away, so those are the MDOT owned trees,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
And on the plans that were submitted, I had a dashed area for signage.
I know, I'm just
Letting them know.
heads up, because
Would they, through the chair, would they be allowed to put it, if you see the shot here where there's the indentation on the east elevation and there's a north-facing wall there? Would something prevent them from putting signage there on that?
yeah, the trees, the MDOT trees really make it hard.
Would the signage requirement also preclude like a mural or something that was painted that had their name on it? Because I feel like that's probably up their aesthetic alley.
Well, if you're getting into murals with signage, I mean, murals are
Can't have.
very specifically not signage in our ordinance. You can't.
I figured.
Sometimes there's a little funny gray area in terms of like colors and branding, but overall, the intent of our murals are not to be additional signage. So I would, we would have to take in the sign application and verify it with our ordinance. I mean, it does say 1 per street frontage on each parcel, so I don't think the council member is wrong by any stretch. But any kind of qualified sign contractor can come up with a good plan for this. We do have other options. I mean, there are projection signs and things like that. So I'm confident they can work to find out a good solution for them.
There are no further questions for our applicant. We could, there are 2 motions for this evening.
Just one more question. I'm a big carryout person, so moving forward, when would you expect to open?
Down to my question, I think we're probably looking at every bit of 6 months to get this thing built out. But if approved, we're gonna hit the ground running for sure.
Spring? Excellent.
Yeah.
I was like, Greg's your first customer.
We'll welcome you with open arms.
So just taking a look at the area there, so there's just to make sure that there's this area where there's benches. I assume the benches are for waiting and not eating. I just want to make sure that there's never any plans, because people cycling through is much less of I feel like less of a impact to the streets as people sitting and parking there for half an hour while they eat. So I just want to make sure that there's not going to be any.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that is the intended purpose of this project here. We have 2 full-scale sit-down restaurants. So there's a reason we're moving to the takeout model. Get them in and get them out.
Not sure they're going to be able to keep them from eating on the benches, though, if folks want to.
Yeah.
So.
Or eating in their cars.
So I'll make a motion in the matter of 22-305 Woodward, consider number 24-25-34-132-066. The Planning Commission approved the parking reduction request of 8 spaces based on the plans dated October 8th, 2024, with the following findings and subject to the following findings in alignment with section 24-223G. There are 3 findings listed, including shared parking agreement with First United Methodist Church.
Second. Motion by Brazen, second by Sabakatani. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote.
Okay, I don't do roll call very often, so bear with me here, but, okay, Newman,
Aye.
Michelli,
Aye.
Azar,
Yes.
Showalter,
Yes.
Brazen, Spakatani,
Yes.
Polika,
Yes.
Chair Foster.
Yes. Motion passes. We did talk about the potential addition of a condition that the applicant work with city staff to locate and properly screen the grease trap for the site plan approval motion.
I'd like to make a motion in the matter of 22305 Woodward sidewall address packet that the planning commission approve the site plan based on plans dated October 8th, 2024 with following findings and subject to the following conditions as outlined in the report, with the added condition of that the applicant will work with city staff to provide appropriate screening for grease traps.
Through the chair, support with a further request to work with the property owner at 220 Pearson regarding screening of their property.
Yep.
All right, that is
They may not want anything.
Yeah.
You know, they may say, no, I'm fine, you know, I don't need anything.
motion by Showalter, second by Polika, with conditions 1 through 3 as stated in the packet, with findings 1 through 5 as listed in the packet, with additional condition number 4 to work with city staff on screening and locating the grease trap, and a condition 5 to work with the adjacent neighbor to the west on screening and fence line. Understood by the applicant. Any discussion on the motion? Vote, please.
Okay. Councilmember Polika?
Yes.
Sabakatani?
Yes.
Brazen?
Yes.
Showalter?
Yes.
Newman?
Yes.
Mashali?
Yes.
Azar?
Yes.
Chair Foster.
Yes, motion passes. All right, thank you, gentlemen. Look forward to some burgers.
Better have good fries.
All right, moving on, we have administrative items. Kyle or Christine, do you have any items for this evening?
I just wanted to do a quick update. So we had our joint meeting at the start of the month. That was really cool. It was a lot of fun. It was really neat to see everybody up there together, talking about the draft zoning ordinance. I sent an email to you all about our proposed schedule. So I just ask that you keep those dates in mind as you, well, it's really just the one date in November for the Planning Commission, but there are the 2 readings in City Council. So we are shooting for adoption in December. These dates are subject to change, so we're still, tweaking things here and there, but that is the proposed schedule at the moment. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Should we state those just for the record if anyone's listening and is trying to prep for, I have got them in front of me if you'd like. That would be November 20th is a potential date for the Planning Commission public hearing. The first public hearing on the adoption of our draft zoning ordinance. And then November 25th is a potential date for our City Council first reading. And then another one to be held at 2 meetings after, right?
Yeah, that'd be December 16th because they are consolidated.
Oh.
City Council meetings, they just do one in December. You can also go to zoneferndale.com, which will be updated when those are set in stone.
Perfect, thank you. Anything else under administrative items? So for commission items, I did want to go back to the comment by Councilman Polika about our public noticing process. In the past, we have tried to expand which projects we send notices out on. I think what we found over the years is it sometimes gives people a sense of undue power over what could happen. So that's one reason why we try not to kind of over-notice, although I think that it is important for people to be aware of what's going on in our communities, to stay engaged. However, once they're, so for example, we love to get the feedback during the master plan process and the zoning process, and I think that's why it's so important to get engaged at that part. But once we move forward with the zoning ordinance and that gets accepted and is our new plan, then what's in that, is what people are able to do with their property. And so if they can change it to a takeout. And so I think that it's really difficult to engage people at that part of the process where, because they might come and say, oh, we don't want this, and then by right, we have to allow them to. So it's just very difficult. But I totally understand where you're coming from, and that the council has a very difficult job of engaging with this citizens who might have, issues or want to be better informed. And so I think that maybe there's different ways outside of our planning process, and maybe it's also just like continued education on what does planning and zoning mean, and kind of coming at it from that process, or like that side of things. So I wanted to definitely mention it and, bring it up for discussion. I didn't want to just kind of bypass what you had said there. So.
Yeah. Well, and I understand. So I know in the past we've had, vacant property that's been, zoned residential for, decades, and all of a sudden a developer comes, wants to build a house, and the neighbor next door is like, well, no one told me. Why is this happening? Well, it's always been residential, and yes, there, wasn't a house, but you should expect that. But I think when you're dealing with a property that exists as one type of use, and in this instance, it was office, which has very low impact to the surrounding neighbors, and then you change it to something with a high volume of activity, I think there should be, some notice provided to the, even if they don't have the opportunity to fight it because it aligns with, our ordinances and it's, by right. I think they should be noticed just so that they're not caught off guard and they're all upset because why didn't the city tell me that all of a sudden this huge change is going to be put into place?
I appreciate when the developer does then go and introduce themselves to the neighbors, and I think that's a really great way for it to happen so that they can introduce themselves to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we don't require that. And I'm sorry, Shoal, I cut you off.
I agree with the whole discussion when it comes to, I kind of agree with site plan. It's an improved use and it's going to a C, staying at C. I don't necessarily know if that needs to be noticed, but with parking reductions, I think that should be noticed because that is something that will be affecting that is something that will possibly be affecting, because that's something that we have real say. We can say no it's not a by right use to do a parking reduction. And let's say that the neighbor next door doesn't have a driveway, and he or she rely on the parking. I feel like
But it's also public space.
it is.
I think Commissioner Foster, to your point, if it's a C use and it stays a C use, that's where it all, it doesn't trigger anything there because that falls under the C use. I guess if we look at like high density parking, and maybe there has to be a categorization of the C use, that if there's something like that requires high traffic, that could be its own use in the zoning ordinance, then that would potentially trigger, something that would notify neighbors. So, but as far as it stands now, if the public approves the zoning ordinance and it's C use, stays a C use, then there wouldn't be. I like Matt's suggestion though on the parking reduction change, is that potentially triggering a notification.
So I encourage everyone to review that section of the zoning ordinance as we move forward with the adoption of the new code, to provide your recommendations for edits. Any other commission items for this evening? Unless there's any other comments on them.
Elections Tuesday, vote.
Thank you.
If you can, vote absentee and get them in by this weekend so that our city clerk's office can process the record, the ballots before Tuesday.
You can also early vote in person.
Yes, you can early vote. The location is in Hazel Park. Information's on our website of the location. Or you can go to vote.gov, I believe. And I believe it's vote.gov, and you enter in your information, your voter information, and it'll tell you where your polling location is. And if you have a ballot, you know, absentee ballot, what the status of that ballot is, et cetera. It's a really great site.
Great, thank you.
And
Great.
sorry to add one thing at the end, I know we're all
It's okay.
encouraged to get out of here. Quickly going back to the notice process, because I actually had this discussion with my husband like 2 weeks ago, because he was getting, it's like, we can't just tell everybody, they're a mile away. But he was like, well, there should be somewhere else. It's like, there's the website. It's like, people know that there's the website, but his idea, and I can't remember, I like have this vague memory growing up in Ferndale of there being like bulletin boards in the parks or like outside of city buildings. And it might just be like totally making this up. And it was just like the library or something, but of like hey, you know, like these things are like stuff we're looking at doing in the area. And his comment mainly was like, the city should like brag about the things that it's doing for citizens on the board so that people know what their tax dollars was going to. We were talking about the Headley stuff. And so I don't know if that's like anything we ever consider of like, besides at City Hall, you know, in public spaces, talking about developments that are happening, just so that like folks like, you know, that are out walking their dogs and kids, like you said, just kind of see that stuff. I know there's some signage requirements for like when the developments are going up and then people see them. Like the builder puts like a sign up front, it's like coming soon, it's gonna be this.
Yeah, we don't actually have a requirement for that, but we've talked about it. Is to have the site-specific like descriptions on site for development processes. Some people, I think, do just because they want to, but we don't actually have a requirement. We have talked about that many times in the past. And I can't remember if we put it in the new ordinance, but we didn't. We should consider that. I think that's an important part of the process. What triggers that, I'm not sure. It's probably more so like shovels in the ground potentially, but I think we could probably look at, you know, so like.
It's like probably the business owner wants to do it too, right? Because they're like, coming soon, please spend your money here in like 2 months.
Yeah, and I think, yeah. And you actually made me think of like things that we've done in the past. I remember having worked for the city, I saw in some of our like historical records that citizens used to get a packet when they moved into Ferndale. It was like a welcome to Ferndale. And I think there was some zoning information. And it would kind of like, and you probably have like a zoning map or something. I don't know if all those things were in it, but that might be a good idea for.
So something that might show someone like 200 Pearson that like, this is an office building now, but it's zoned as this, and it could be like any one of these things in the future.
Yeah, and that's just like general education, because so many people are unaware of the development process, that it would be, go to everyone that, you know, register, or at least buys a home. I know renters would still be not included in it.
Yeah, the welcome packet is a Plan Ferndale action item, so, you know, it's very, very relevant to that. And then we do have the quarterly newsletter, which goes to every single mailbox, and on the very last page, it does list the, you know, the bi-weekly, you know, every first and third Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Planning Commission times, as well as some other boards and commissions information. So yeah, I mean, I think these are all really good ideas. We do have the bulletin board right outside over there, but, you know, depending on what your walking route is, or even, you know, people come to City Hall from all different directions, so, you know, it's possible they might not even see it down there.
Thank you.
Parks would be,
Yeah, that's
people
good.
go to parks. That's, people don't walk to City Hall, people walk to parks.
His primary thing was, he was like, I'd love to like be at the park. I was like, he loves reading like historical plaques and stuff. It's like, who's gonna just go to the park and like read all of these like financial statements on the bulletin board? But again, it's very high level concept, but just even like, not just our stuff, but other things going on in the city.
Thank you. Anything else for this evening? If not, we will adjourn the planning commission meeting of Wednesday, October 30th at 7:19 PM. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.